Tonight, I'm diving into a story that marks a historic shift in Israel's military operations. And for the first time since the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Israel has deployed elite forces and tanks into Syrian territory. This is a big move, and it comes in response to the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime and the growing threat posed by the extremist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who's declared their next target as Jerusalem. So who are these rebels? The group leading this charge in Damascus is called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or the HTS, and that name sounds unfamiliar. It's because they've rebranded themselves several times. They started as Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda's official branch in Syria. Yes, I said it, Al-Qaeda, the same terror group that attacked the U.S. on 9/11, and were responsible for some of the deadliest attacks during the Syrian civil war. In 2016, they split from Al-Qaeda, at least officially, and rebranded as HTS, trying to present themselves as a more moderate Islamist faction, if you will. But that, make no mistake, the core ideology remains the same, and their leader, Abu Muhammad Al-Jolani, is the name you need to remember. Jolani is a master terrorist who started his career as part of Al-Qaeda in Iraq under Abu Musad al-Zarqawi. Yes, the same Zarqawi responsible for unleashing ISIS throughout that region. And Jolani broke away from ISIS to form Jabhat al-Nusra, claiming to represent a pure jihadist ideology focused on Syria. And you can guess what that means. Jolani's been playing a long game. He's positioned himself as the acceptable face of Islamist resistance in Syria. He's given interviews to Western media with the suit and the tie, portraying himself as a reasonable leader. But behind the facade is a man with blood, the blood of thousands on his hand, and his group has committed atrocities, including mass executions, torture, and the systematic targeting of minorities in Syria. And what makes HTS and Jolani particularly dangerous, in my opinion, is their adaptability. True guerrilla style. They've survived multiple shifts throughout the Syrian conflict, fighting Assad's forces, clashing with ISIS, and even negotiating a ceasefire with Western-backed factions. And Jolani has transformed HTS from a purely militant terror group into a quasi-government in the Idlib province. They've set up courts, collected taxes, and even run schools. But underneath this political veneer, if you will, HTS remains a ruthless jihadist terrorist organization with a clear goal: creating an Islamic State, and now expanding their fight to include Jerusalem. Have a look.
مسجد محمد وكذلك الكعبة ندخلها بإذن الله تكبير.
Now this isn't just about Syria anymore. HTS's declaration, نحن قديم من al-Quds, in Arabic, we're coming for Jerusalem. This is more than just rhetoric. This is a calculated move, in my opinion, to galvanize Islamist factions across the region. That's Hamas in Gaza to Hezbollah in Lebanon, who we've thumped over the last year. They're trying to position themselves as the vanguard of the Islamist movement against Israel. And that's the way I see it. And let's not forget, HTS isn't acting alone. Their rise has been supported indirectly or directly by countries that we've seen trying to counterweight Assad's regime, and that includes funding from Gulf states and logistical support from different shadow networks that cross borders. And the rebel success in Damascus is a culmination of years of strategic planning and opportunism. And now they're looking for their next target. Are you guys a fan of Israeli special operations? Grab yourself a signed copy of my best-selling memoir, Brotherhood of Warriors. It's my memoir about my service in one of Israel's top counterterrorism units, the elite Mistaravim units. Grab yourself a signed copy now. Hit the description down below. I've got a limited number of these. If you want to find out about our training pipeline, how we conduct operations in Israel, and how we pull off this magic that we pull off. It's all about deception, or like we say, Ki batach bolota selecha milchama, by way of deception. Grab yourself a signed copy of my best-selling memoir, Brotherhood of Warriors. Hit the link down in the description and learn about Israel's incredible special ops and what it was like from an American perspective to go through this training pipeline and be in this type of unit. Hit the description down in the link in my bio and grab yourself a signed copy today. So what does that mean for Israel? Jolani and HTS aren't just a distant threat. Let me say that again. Their declaration signals an intent to unify Islamist factions under a single banner, with Jerusalem as their rallying cry. That's a red flag Israel cannot ignore. And when people signal in the Middle East, you better listen. Let's take a closer look. Israel's northern border is now a potential hotspot for infiltration, smuggling, and terrorist activity. And recognizing this quickly, the IDF has already taken significant steps to secure the Golan Heights. And what makes this response unique isn't just its scale. It's the combination of elite special operations forces and heavy armor, including tanks. These elements aren't typically deployed for border operations, but are now essential in deterring large-scale incursions and neutralizing those heavily armed terrorist threats if they start to creep over. The precision airstrikes targeting military infrastructure and weapons convoys inside Syria are part of this action. And Israel's been really proactive with this in the last couple of days. This isn't just a defensive thing anymore. This is preemptive, designed to ensure that Israel stays ahead of these threats, because that's how it works in counterterrorism. You're not waiting. You've got to be in front of this thing. And Israel's response to the collapse of Syria and the rise of HTS, Israel's been moving very quickly and aggressively. And for the first time since 73, the IDF, like I said, has moved tanks. Now they've got elite special operations forces deep into Syrian territory. And this is a historic shift in strategy that signals the seriousness of this threat. In IDF ground operations, elite units, paratroopers, Sayeret Tzadchanim, armored brigades, Chativat Sheva, and special operations forces assets, Sheldag, Sayeret Matkal, have been deployed to positions along the Syrian border. This is designed to establish a defensive buffer to prevent HTS and those other hostile enemies mixed in from getting into Israel territory. Talk about Israel's Air Force. They've been conducting dozens and dozens of surgical airstrikes on critical sites within Syria since HTS decided to mix things up and take out Assad. Israel's Sheldag, JTAC, or Joint Terminal Attack Controller Unit, one of the busiest units in the last year, including taking out military research facilities allegedly used by Iran and weapons convoys destined for Hezbollah. And by targeting these assets, Israel is not just defending its borders, it's disrupting that flow of advanced weaponry that could tip the balance of power in the region. So Israel's moving quick to blitz on those targets. And the use of tanks, special forces, air power together, all this kind of marks a shift in how Israel is addressing this new asymmetrical threat. And this combination allows for more flexibility. An overwhelming force, essentially, for dealing with groups like HTS who operate in that difficult terrain. You got to remember that Golan Heights on the Syrian side, very mountainous and very difficult to get around and move around it. So as Assad flees Damascus, reportedly heading to Moscow, his absence is leaving a monster power vacuum that's already being filled by HTS. And the fall of the Assad regime marks the end of an era. It's a big deal, but introduces a new chapter of what I believe is going to be a different type of instability in the region. And so for Israel, this instability poses both risks and opportunities. On one hand, you've got the collapse that weakens Iran's foothold in Syria. Ally Assad is no longer in control. And on the other hand, it emboldens HTS, who now have less opposition with their movement. And this is why Israel's proactive measures, those troops launching the airstrikes, securing that intelligence, it's a really critical time right now for Israel. Now, I just want to say this. In moments like these, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, whether you're a Jew living outside of Israel or an Israeli listening to this podcast, by these kind of threats stacking up against Israel. But let me share a perspective that doesn't make the headlines very often. And I was speaking to this to every news channel on October 8th, the day after the October 7th massacre. Israel has faced existential threats since its founding. And every single time, it has risen stronger. Israel's military, intelligence agencies, and civilians, and the IDF and the reservists are unmatched in their ability to adapt and to respond to these challenges. Take, for example, the Iron Dome. Revolutionary technology has saved thousands, if not millions of lives by intercepting rocket attacks. And behind that technology, the minds and the spirit of the people in Israel who refuse to accept defeat. And let's not forget the IDF's preparedness. Israel's border units, special operations forces aren't just ready. They're proactive. And they've already taken steps to secure the buffer zone along that Syrian border. And their track record shows that when the time comes, Israel responds and responds with fervor. Don't forget, Israel's assassinated every major terrorist leader in the last year. And then there's that little pager operation that we carried out, which will long be considered one of the finest counter-terror operations in the history of special operations. This portion of the Aaron Cohen Show is sponsored by the Cherry's Deep Concealment Holster. This is the same holster I trained Keanu on for the John Wick franchise. This thing runs below the waistband, which means there's zero digging into your gut, and it's never going to come off you if you have to go hands-on. The holster rides below the waistband, means that the clip and the top of the gun run parallel, zero digging into your gut, super comfortable. This thing is absolutely a beast. Also, lightning fast draw with just a little bit of training. Go to cherriescounterterror.com. There's a bit of a lead time right now due to demand, but trust me, these are worth it. Hit cherriescounterterror.com and finally carry with proper concealment and comfort. And so the collapse of Assad's regime and the rise of this rebel terrorist faction, HTS, doesn't just affect Israel. I want to say this. This is a global issue. As extremist groups gain ground in Syria, their influence will extend beyond the Middle East. That is their goal, to dominate the West. And they're eyeing Europe right now, and they're eyeing the United States. They want to extend it beyond the Middle East. And we've seen how conflicts in this region inspire terrorism worldwide, from Paris to New York on 9/11. Israel's actions securing borders, neutralizing threats, gathering impeccable intelligence doesn't just protect Israelis. It protects Western allies by serving as the front line against global terrorism. And for the United States and Europe, supporting Israel in this fight isn't just about standing with an ally. It's about investing in global security and ensuring that these terrorist maniacs that threaten the West don't reach our shores here. And so the collapse of Syria and the rise of HTS, this marks the beginning of a dangerous new chapter in the Middle East. Get ready for it. You heard it here. But Israel's rising to meet the challenge. And with Trump now in office, get ready for a beautiful and dangerous partnership to face that challenge together. And with the elite IDF units deployed in the Golan Heights, airstrikes, hitting key sites in Syria, Israel's going to handle business as always. And so as I close this one out tonight, I want to leave you with this. Israel's strength doesn't just come from its military. It comes from its people, their resilience, that innovation, and their commitment to ensuring that the homeland of Israel remains safe and secure. And when people were freaking out on October 7th, by October 8th, I went, get ready. You're about to see a warrior culture come together. And that's what happened. I want to thank you guys for watching this episode. Stay informed, stay vigilant. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of what I discussed here. Always look forward to hearing your thoughts and reading your comments. This episode of the Aaron Cohen Show is sponsored by the Cherries Counterterrorism School. If you're law enforcement or a security professional and you're interested in training online and learning Israel's incredible counterterrorism methodologies for active shooter response and for CQB, for high threat CQB, go to cherriescounterterror.com and get trained in the authentic Israeli methodology for active shooter response and limited penetration room clearing. I want to thank you guys for tuning into this one. I'm going to keep an eye on this one and come back as this situation unfolds. I'm Aaron Cohen. You're watching the Aaron Cohen Show, and I will catch you guys on the next one.